How many of you have been to a CPAC before? Which do you prefer, Washington, D.C. or Florida? I hear you, I hear you. You know, we had to be creative and innovative because the whole D.C. area is shut down. We could not have more than 10 people at a meeting, so obviously this could not have worked. So we came to Florida. But we do other innovative things. As you know, we've taken CPAC global. Japan, Australia, Brazil, Korea. You know, we have friends from Korea here today. You know, and our partners, CPAC, they are doing amazing work. I've been to Korea now 3 times, and the CPAC folks were telling me, you know, they had their presidential election and legislative elections in April, and they were telling me that they were concerned that the elections there would be fraudulent. Many people don't understand. They think of South Korea as an ally of the US. The current president of South Korea, not North Korea, I'm talking about South Korea, is a socialist. And he rigged the Korean elections. And lots of good people lost their seats. And the evidence is so obvious and so clear. So our good friends in Korea, the CPAC folks, I can't thank you enough for what you've done. They brought the message to America. They said, don't let what happened in Korea happen here. And what happened? We didn't heed their warning closely enough. So we have a big fight. I also want to mention a domestic organization, Save Our States. You saw the leader of Save Our States on our stage yesterday. They are making sure that the Electoral College remains in place. This is our founding fathers' great genius. They understood that individuals have to be able to elect their own officials and that states have to have proper representation. That's what the Electoral College does, and Save Our States is working hard to protect that. So I hope that you'll go and find out more information about Save Our States because it's a great organization worth supporting. Now, there are 3 Americans who've been warning us literally for a couple decades about what's going to happen in our elections. These guys have done amazing work. They've been writing on this topic. They've been appearing on TV, appearing on radio. You're going to recognize every single one of them. But I want to take a moment to bring them out and essentially give them the proverbial gold medal for what they've done to try to alert us. And frankly, we just didn't heed their call well enough. But it's time for us to really understand what went on and what we can do to fix it. J. Christian Adams has done an amazing job writing on this. Hans von Spakovsky, an individual I've known for a long time. And John Fund, somebody I've read for years and years. These are the 3 individuals who've been warning us, and now they're going to try to help us understand what needs to happen. Gentlemen, when did the left, in earnest, really begin this assault on our election system?
Well, I'll tell you, Hans and I were at the Justice Department.
Well, Christian, I don't think they've turned your mic on.
How about that? There you go. You weren't listening. Listen, Hans and I were at the Justice Department 15 years ago when we saw Georgia voter ID come to the Justice Department for approval. You would not believe how much the people who are coworkers hated it. And that was to stop Georgia voter ID. But the left has gotten more sophisticated. It's not just about voter fraud, it's about changing how we run elections. The architecture, national popular vote you just heard, but also ranked choice voting, same-day registration. It's not voter fraud, but they're changing the rules of the game. And that's the next step. The most important thing you guys can do is stop private funding of elections, like Center for Technology and Civic Life, the Zuckerberger $450 million. That changed the election more than anything.
$450 million.
And that's a drop in the bucket. They've been spending hundreds of millions in this space since 2005. When we go to court, the other side of the courtroom doesn't have enough chairs for all the lawyers. They have 15 lawyers in some cases.
Right. And what everybody needs to realize is what we all understand, folks on the left dismiss, which is for fair and secure elections, you need both access and security. And what they've been doing now for the past 2 decades, through lawsuits, through pushing litigation, the latest through H.R. 1, which we talked about, which we're trying to push through Congress, is to basically get rid of all of the security protocols that states have in place to try to make sure we have integrity of the elections. Just one quick example of this. They filed numerous lawsuits last year before the election using COVID as an excuse in, for example, South Carolina and Alabama to say, oh, you all should not be able to enforce your witness signature requirement on absentee ballots. Well, it's just too dangerous, even though you can stand 6 feet away from somebody with a mask on, and it takes about 30 seconds to see them
Hans,
sign a ballot.
I want you to repeat that. On mail-in ballots, when the person's not even standing there, can't present an ID, they're not checking signature verification.
Right. And so they were fortunately unsuccessful in South Carolina and Alabama because the attorney generals there fought, can I say fought like hell, to prevent that from going forward, okay? But that provision saying no state can enforce a witness signature requirement on absentee ballot is now in H.R. 1. So if that federal bill gets passed, no state anywhere in the country can enforce a basic security protocol on absentee ballots.
Okay, well, you guys were at DOJ. John, you've been writing on this. What is this H.R. 1?
It is the worst bill that's of a non-fiscal nature that has ever been introduced in Congress. The table of contents is 24 pages long.
Wait, John, before you get into that, H.R. 1. What does H.R. mean? What's the one
It is
mean?
Nancy Pelosi's top priority.
Number
she gets
one.
to label the bills by what number she wants them to appear for a vote. H.R. 1 is her first priority. And what it does is basically federalize, nationalize the elections, take away all of the protections that every one of your states has for clean and fair elections. You must defeat it. You must defeat it. Every single Democrat has co-sponsored it, but if you put enough pressure on the 22 Democrats in Trump districts, I think you can bend some of those. And of course, there's the Senate to stop it. Second thing I would simply say, one of the mistakes that was made in this election by everyone is thinking that you can combat voter fraud after the election.
Yeah.
You have to address it before the election.
Right.
And frankly, we didn't have the lawyers who did that properly. The last thing you need to understand is this. We shouldn't always yell fraud first. Sometimes the laws that the Democrats have put in are so loosey-goosey, so confusing, so chaotic, planned chaos, that they create a situation where, as Hans and I wrote in our book, you can't tell where the incompetence ends in the election office and where the fraud begins.
Hans, what's the name of this book?
Who's counting? How fraudsters and bureaucrats put your vote at risk. And I guess I can tell folks we're working on an updated version, which will hopefully come out fairly soon.
What's in the updated version? Topics.
Well, we published the original book in 2012, and it was our book to emphasize that election fraud actually exists. So we went through and listed case after case after case. And frankly, there's been a lot of cases in the last 8 years that we'll be able to add.
We're going to explain the 2020 election and what really happened and what was exaggeration and what was ignored.
This is important. I know all of us are concerned about our vote because democracy is voting. But there are some conspiracy theories out there. They are not worth chasing. Those conspiracy theories don't hold water when there is so much real, known, knowable stuff. Christian, what are some examples of knowable, known stuff that went wrong?
Well, look, we know there were dead voters. We know there were double voters. We can catalog those, but you can't catalog them right away. The Public Interest Legal Foundation, we cataloged the 2018 election in a book called Critical Condition, where we got all the voter rolls for the entire country, and we amalgamated them, and we could tell you how many dead voted.
I want you to explain that. What does it mean to amalgamate the voter rolls, and why are you doing that?
It's complicated because you have to get all this data. It's expensive. You have to normalize it. You can't do it in 2 weeks. When we heard about dead people and double voters the week after the election, we knew that was phony because you can't catalog that. You can't just go challenge hundreds of thousands of voters,
So
because it's
just,
a civil right.
let's just, anytime somebody says, no, that didn't happen, I think you're telling me, telling
Wait.
all of us, you can't know that it didn't happen yet
Exactly.
because it takes
Dan,
time.
one piece of advice for everyone in the audience. When you buy a car, you do some research. When you buy a washing machine, you do some research. When someone comes to you and says, I have the grand solution and answer for all voter fraud, and I have the secret sauce, you know, there's some grifters out there, and they were active in this election, and you don't automatically send them your money. Kick the tires.
Okay, this is critical. My mom used to call me and say, well, I'm hearing this one organization I really like say this, but then there's another organization I hear saying the opposite. Who am I supposed to trust? Now, all of us live in the swamp. And all of us, we could, you know, if you bought us enough beer, we could probably tell you all the organizations that are truly good and all the organizations that are not worth your time or your money. But there are these organizations that they chase the dollars. They'll sound like they're earnest, but they're just trying to get your money. Gentlemen, what do? You call them grifters. Can you help us? Heritage Foundation, Hans, you're with the Heritage Foundation. Can you tell us some of the things you're doing?
Probably the biggest thing we've been doing at Heritage, frankly, for years, is we've been making recommendations to states on what their laws ought to be in this area. I did a series of studies to basically show that this claim, for example, that voter ID keeps people from voting is totally untrue. The evidence clearly shows that's not the case. We have this election fraud database. I think you all know we're up to over 1,300 cases. And we have a new project we're working on this year. We're going to create an election integrity index that's going to rate every single state in the country on how good their laws are on this issue.
Look,
Well,
we're
just
not.
a second. I've got to turn to Christian. Can you name me one excellent organization? This is a softball.
Well, okay, Public Interest Legal Foundation.
Wait, say that slowly.
Public Interest Legal Foundation. We stopped Virginia last year. Listen to this. They issued rules to allow late ballots to come in by mail with no postmark. We sued, and we won. You didn't hear that very much. And we stopped Virginia from allowing late ballots with no postmarks. It was a bleak landscape with one tiny shiny diamond. So now, you got to fight, because this fight is going to happen in 2 years.
I know time is running short, but when you see these gentlemen on Fox Nation and other excellent organizations, listen to them. When you hear them on the radio, I'm sure you must have social media accounts. Look them up, follow them, read their stuff. It's really important. But John, let me give you the last question. What are your parting thoughts of wisdom?
If we can stop H.R. 1, if we can get the 27 states that have Republican governors and Republican legislatures, most of them the swing states are in that category, if we can do that, if we can separate the wheat from the chaff, the exaggerations from the reality, we can have a much cleaner election system in 2022 that we can all be proud of, and we can be confident that the election will be free and fair, and I believe we will recapture the House and recapture the Senate.
Okay, so for all of you who have downloaded the CPAC app, you're getting a push notification right now. You can click on it, and through it, you'll be able to go directly to your member of Congress and tell your member of Congress what you think about H.R. 1. And if you don't have the CPAC app, you can just go to conservative.org and you'll be able to find it. Tell your members of Congress what you think about H.R. 1. You've got to do it now. And then make sure your friends know how they can do the same thing. Right. Thank you, gentlemen. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.